Exactly 1 week ago, American President Joe Biden took Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism. For Cubans and supporters of Cuba, it is a good omen and a blessing. But it raises questions like, why didn't Biden do this when he first got into office? And why didn't he lift the trade embargo as well?
It would have been much better news if that decision was taken 4 years ago when President Biden entered the White House and was called upon by Cuba and other nations to remove that undeserving designation that had been imposed by President Trump on his way out.
Earl Bousquet is arguably the best and most accomplished journalist in the history of St. Lucia. He is also a dedicated friend of Cuba and the Bolivarian revolutionary movement. According to him, Biden's decision to take Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism is not about Cuba, it is about playing politics.
What we are seeing now is that President Biden, 6 days before departing the White House, at the snap of a finger, was able to raise that designation as easy as that. And certainly it would have been much more welcome if it was not done within the context of the fact that there is a big question as to whether President Biden has taken that decision to support Cuba or whether he has taken that decision to put pressure on President Trump.
Trump's preferred nominee for Secretary of State is Marco Rubio, a Cuban American who is very strongly against the Cuban Revolution.
The new or next U.S. Secretary of State is Marco Rubio, of Cuban descent, who formerly represented Florida, where the anti-Cuba lobby is based. And as a congressman, as a representative of Florida, he has never wasted time to make it absolutely clear how hard and how long he would like to squeeze Cuba.
According to Bousquet's analysis, Biden has forced Rubio and the rest of the Trump administration into a lose-lose situation. If they maintain Biden's decision, they will anger their anti-Cuba base. If they reverse the decision, they will spark the ire of Americans who have never supported anti-Cuba policies and sanctions. It is brilliant politics at the expense of ordinary Cubans.
It's the same game that Biden played with Gaza, where having failed to bring about a peace agreement in Gaza, he last week took the presidential decision to give $3 billion of U.S. aid to Ukraine. As a result of that, the Ukrainians have become emboldened and are attacking the Russians within Russia and heightening the state of the conflict.
Bousquet notes that the decision came just days after the U.S. State Department increased the $15 million bounty for the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to $25 million US, further underlining the political nature of the move to take Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism.
On his way out, President Biden is making trouble and creating problems for the incoming Trump administration. And it is within that context that people like myself who have been following the relationship between Havana and Washington, between the Middle East, Israel, and Washington, between the Ukraine President and Washington, are of the view that none of these decisions announced by President Biden have been in the interest of Gaza, Ukraine, Cuba, or Venezuela, but more playing poker with the incoming Trump administration.
For Choice News Now, I'm Jason Seaflay.